Seiko, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. Um, Sorry, apologies for the delay. We were having some technical difficulties, but we were able to figure it all out. I am hoping that everyone can see me and hear me. And if you would like to post your questions, please send them via the chat and I will be able to. Yay! Good, thank you. It's really weird because I can't see anyone, so I'm just trying to make sure that everyone can hear and see me. Um, we'll wait for a few more people to come on. Right now, there's only about 3 people on, so we'll just give everyone a couple minutes. But before we take questions, I just ask you to put them in the comment section and I will answer them as we go along. This Q&A session, I just want to thank you to Spark for inviting me to be a part of it today. I'm very excited. I've never done a Facebook Live before, but I'm really excited to be here. I wanted to do the Q&A session as a part of my YouTube presentation that I did from Curve Lake to Brantford, which is really looking at how a partnership grew between an indigenous and non-indigenous presenting organizations. And it was really, really exciting. I'm thinking, I wanted to thank everyone for their wonderful feedback regarding the YouTube video and the presentation. So I'm really, really excited for today. I'm going to answer a couple questions. I'll kind of wait for a few more people to jump on. But I did receive some questions ahead of time, and so I can go through some of those that were not able to attend today's Q&A. So one of the first questions I received prior to the Q&A tonight was a question regarding did you find that presenting Indigenous work at the Sanderson Center has engaged audiences who might not normally have had a chance to see Indigenous work? So the quick answer to that is yes, definitely. Sanderson was already, like I said in my presentation, Sanderson was already doing some of that work of presenting Indigenous content as part of their performing arts series. And it was really good because we were able to sort of start the groundwork, not from scratch, that they were already had developed this program. And it definitely brought a new audience to see that content because they might be an audience who may not have normally, say, come to my space at Woodland Cultural Center. They would have never maybe been exposed to it in the same way. So I definitely think it did engage audiences to Indigenous content that might not have been through, who might not have seen it. Another question, oh, sorry, I just received another one. Was it difficult to convince your organization to partner with Sanderson Center or to show them what the benefits of an Indigenous and non-Indigenous partnership would be? No, we receive a lot of requests normally in a given year from various groups and organizations who are looking to partner with the work that we do, who find that they have similar types of programming that could be find an intersection between the work that we do at Woodland and then the work they do at their organization. So we usually vet them, those partnership requests, and through our programming team. And our programming team will look at it and see, well, what, does it fit sort of our, artistic vision? Does it fit our curatorial themes for that year? is this something that, the relationship has already started with this non-Indigenous organization already, and is it something that it will continue um, into the future? And so sometimes they're cold calls. People reach out to us via email or social media or just calling us at the center, and we'll spend time reviewing the request for partnership um, proposals. But it wasn't a difficult one with Sanderson, I think, because it was between, sort of two leaders at the organization. So it was between myself and Glenn Brown, who was the manager at Sanderson Center. So from that level, we were both sort of in already developing this relationship. And then from there, it went into a um, sort of programming relationship where we could see the benefits of working with one another. Our spaces, are like locations of our organizations, are not far from one another. It's literally a 5-minute drive. We're just outside the downtown core, whereas the Sanderson's right in the downtown core of the city of Brantford. So it's not super far. It's not hard for that sort of that way to go between our two sites. And I think for the board of directors, they were excited because they saw the potential that was there, and they knew that there was an opportunity to um, reach a new audience that maybe not normally would have stepped through our doors. But by working together and collaboratively together, we were able to bring that sort of partnership to fruition. And also, it gives us an opportunity to open the doors to other community partners. So, with a lot of the work that I talked about with what we did with Sanderson, um, whether it was through Woodland or when I went to Six Nations Tourism, was that we were able to bring in like other community partners to help be a part of the programming, whether that's doing outreach, connecting to their clientele and audiences, doing some marketing, providing comp tickets to their board of directors or their board of trustees or their staff who wanted to maybe participate in performing arts program of some sort. So it was really, really, I think it was a good way to find that balance and that reciprocal relationship that's really key. The one thing that our programming team always looks at is like, we don't ever look at a partnership from a one-sided perspective. So we want to make sure that if we're partnering with someone, another organization, we want to ensure that we see a benefit, but also what can we give and what can we share, and vice versa with the non-Indigenous organization that we're working with. And I don't necessarily always want to say non-Indigenous and Indigenous. I think what we're looking for at the end of the day is a very collaborative and reciprocal partnership with whoever that is. It could be another Indigenous organization, it could be a non-Indigenous organization, but at the end of the day, we look at those reciprocal and benefit, and a truly collaborative partnership is really at the end of the day what we look for. So a question I got on the chat was, what was the most exciting part of the project for you personally? Um, I think when I was thinking about how Sanderson and Woodland started to work together, it really comes back to that car ride. And I think for me, on that personal level, if it wasn't for the invitation that I received from Judy Harkwell to be a part of that gathering we had up near Curve Lake, and we actually met twice. I should have maybe mentioned that. And Judy actually reminded me of it just the other day. But yes, it was that whole ability to come together in a new space. We were up north, and we were pretty much sort of secluded from other people, and it was just roughly, I think there was 9 of us, well, maybe more than that, maybe 10 of us that were all together at that gathering. And really, that coming together, the car ride up there to get to know Glenn on a more personal level, outside of the office, outside of like, that where we would have probably both have been distracted if we had been working in our office, in our space, or even meeting up together somewhere in the city. It would have maybe not given us that chance to sort of step back and just really focus on working on our relationship and building and developing that relationship. So for me, that was probably the most exciting part, was that at the end of the day, me and Glenn, met for the first time on that gathering trip, and then continue to keep in touch and collaborate together. Unfortunately, COVID has not been able to do that right now, although we had plans for this performing arts season with a specific program. But I think that was probably my most benefiting one, because um, it really just allowed us to sort of have that space and that time to really reflect and really get to know one another. And, at the end of the day, we're actually, quite good friends. And we're able to be very honest and open with one another. So I think that really, truly is the best part of that project. Another question I received was, you mentioned that your partnership with Sanderson began through an informal meeting, a 3-hour car ride. How did that happen? Seriously, though, how should we approach those conversations with Indigenous creators and presenters? Should we reach out to let people know the door is open? Absolutely. I can't speak for everyone, but I think the first step is really just having that initial conversation. Um, I really, really, really appreciated that Judy invited me on that trip. I really appreciated that we were able to have that conversation. And I think, maybe the first step is, like I said, looking in your backyard, looking to a community that maybe is close by to you, or talking to, some people you already work with and see if they have any connections. Me and Glenn knew of each other because we work in the arts and cultural sector in a fairly medium-sized city, so it's not that big of a group. Like, pretty much everyone knows each other in the arts and cultural sector in Brantford and Brant Six Nations. So it's not like we didn't know who one another was. So I think that also made it a little bit easier. But yeah, I think just saying, like, I'm open to a conversation. I'm here to learn and listen and continue to um, see where this might go. And I think too, the one thing that was really key was that neither one of us had expectations. Like, we both shared our own visions, we both shared our programming ideas with one another, but we didn't have an expectation. We didn't say, like, this is the outcome we're going to have, or this is what we want to achieve. We just sort of left it and made it sort of come together organically, which I think was probably the best way to go about it. But I would suggest, just saying, let's open and just start talking and just making that first step, and and asking questions that you may not know, or are like, well, I want to learn more about your community, or I want to learn more about your artistic practice. We're open to presenting Indigenous creators and Indigenous artists. I think that's really key as well. But yeah, just opening the door. So just a couple comments that did come in. I just wanted to bring them up. So people are saying sometimes the bandwidth is not allowing them to stream live the conversation. But Spark just confirmed that they're going to be posting this on their YouTube channel next week, and it will live on this page now too. Another question I had is, do you feel like the project has contributed to creating cohesion within the community at large? Um, I don't really know. I think what it did was uh, it took, you know, I think we're still building that. We're still taking the time to build those relationships, and we are still um, trying to break down some barriers, I think, within our communities. It's not always easy. There's a lot of history between our two communities. And so I think we just sort of take our time, and we spend a lot of time trying to find out who's best to partner with, who do we want to work with, and we try to ensure that we do that community outreach and that audience development that we both need to do on both of our ends. So I think, I don't know if it's really brought us both our communities together per se, but I definitely think it is making an attempt and an effort. We don't really necessarily think of it like that when we started to work together. It's just we wanted to spend the time, take the time, talk about what made things work between our two sites and our programming. And so definitely, I think in that sense, yeah, we do try, but it's going to take a lot of time. Our communities have a very long and very complex history, so we definitely can't solve it overnight, but we are definitely trying. Just a comment I received on the chat. Taking the time and not rushing to build a lasting relationship is truly an indigenous way. I love how both parties committed and trusted the process. Absolutely. I can't maybe stress that enough. And I think I sort of chatted about that in my presentation. But that was, when I think about it, it was back in 2016. So, it's been 4 years. And out of those 4 years, I wasn't actually working at Woodland. I was working for another organization, but we were still able to stay in touch. So and I think that's really key. I think sometimes people look at relationships between organizations and think that, oh, it's the organization, and it's, you know, sometimes those in leadership, we don't always realize that it takes us a lot of time to cultivate and build those relationships, and it takes on a very personal level. So I definitely think that, um, you know, sometimes the partnership may not always stay with the organizations, um, necessarily, depending on the change in leadership or the change in personnel. Um, because really, at the end of the day, for us, me and Glenn cultivate that relationship on behalf of our organizations that we work for, but um, that doesn't always necessarily translate. Because, like, when I left, you know, some of what I was working on with Glenn came with me to tourism and vice versa. So, um, yeah, I think it's just something to be cognizant of, that if you are going to build these relationships, it's really key to make sure that if it is just between maybe one or two individuals between the organizations, it's also going to be really key to introduce other members of those organizations together as well, so that, if in my case, I left, and that relationship that I had built with the Sanderson and with Glenn sort of kind of went with me to another place. So I just want to be cognizant of that, and that's like something I learned in hindsight. So I would just ensure that if you are going to build these relationships, and for small to medium sized organizations, it would be really key to make sure that you are bringing other, team members to the table to help solidify those relationships and partnerships. One of the questions also that was received was, what are some ways that small communities, individual people can support Indigenous artists? Um, well, really, one easy way is to, do some research. We look at some of the local, I'm not going to say local, look at some Indigenous artists, and in the various sectors. And I just want to, like, would say that, support them, present them if you have that ability to, um, follow them on social media, and really just, try to think of it in that sort of terms. Like, um, I always tell people it's it's not it's not hard to do. It's, it look to see what you're interested in, and look to see what your community's interested in. If you do really well with live music, do some research. Look at some live music. Look at some Indigenous artist musicians, and there are a number of websites in this country that support that, you can go to things like Indigenous Performing Arts Alliance. You can look up various festivals who showcase a lot of Indigenous artists now. And yeah, like a lot of our artists from our communities are on social media. They're constantly updating and constantly showing what they do. And um, look at there's Indigenous radio stations. There's Indigenous like CBC has Indigenous music. Look at all of those and just see and it's it takes some time to look, but it's not that difficult. Um, I wish I was more succinct with that answer, but yeah, just really just kind of keep your ears to the ground and try and see what you can find out. And there are a lot of resources out there on, especially now online. And there's been a lot of really great virtual festivals from even the Indigenous perspective, where you get to see them perform live from their living rooms and hear their music or watch them dance or see their films. It's really, really, really important. And I think it's how you would normally sort of look for artists generally if you're looking to present them. Another comment I received. Oh, this person's watching from Australia. Hi. They are a small activity-based theater group with values in a small town. We had a plan at the start of the year, but we seem a bit random and challenging organizationally. How long before you began to feel comfortable, flow, and what is the key? Hmm. Well, I think for us, we didn't. So Six Nations is a pretty large First Nations, probably the most populated in Canada. So we have over 20,000 members, roughly 13,000 who live on reserve. And we started very, very small. We do receive funding from the arts councils, from Ontario Arts Council and Canada Council for the Arts. So we started very small, doing some performances. And what we did first, just to sort of test the waters, was we started, we would show different genres. So we did theater, we did music, we did dance, we did film, and we did it in a way where because we had funding for a majority of it, we did some that were free. We also did some that were by donation. And we always did a performance during the day for schools, for our local schools in our community, and offered that free. So, and all the schools had to do was pay for the busing to get to our site. And it really worked because the students were super happy. We had people in seats. We have a very small multi-purpose space. It only seats 130. So yeah, we started out small and we just really took the time to sort of try to build that audience first. We showed obviously all Indigenous works. So at the time, there was a few theater companies who were touring, so we jumped on those tours. And we also connected right away with local artists. So we're very fortunate at Six Nations. We have a lot of artists working in various genres. So we would connect with them almost immediately to see if they would consider performing. And yeah, it's really, really great. And I definitely think it was a really easy way for us to promote our local artists, but also when you do promote local artists, they tend to bring a lot of their friends and family to their shows. So that also sort of helped. And now with social media, a lot of them spread the word, for their events. So it really got people to their own followers to come out and check out them perform. And that's usually how it sort of started. But we did start very, very small. We moved to ticketed events as we built that audience, as we built more of a following. And then once we secured some additional funding, we were able to bring in sort of more national and international acts. And when we knew we were going to outgrow our space, so we started to partner with other organizations, and that's kind of how the Sanderson thing happened. Was there was some programming we wanted to do, we just didn't have the space, or nor did we have the technical requirements that we would need for those artists. So that's where those partnerships are really, really great, because we were able to take some of our programming to a new audience, but also to a new space, and to a space that would accommodate the artists and their needs. Not sure if that answered your question, but yeah, we really do work. We started small, and we just kind of went from there and built it. But we really just really truly grew it from our backyard of showcasing our own local artists. And then for artists that maybe our community were not aware of, or they didn't know, we always book a local opener for a headliner who may be national or international, so people may not know, but at least they would come out for sure just to support the local artists, and then would stay. And we've had some really, really great success with that, where we brought in, for example, an international Japanese Ainu rock artist, and a lot of people didn't know who he was, and he's phenomenal. But we purposely booked a local music group before him, so a lot of people came to see the local group, and then were like astounded by him, and like he sold out of all his CDs at our show because people were just so amazed. But that's really a very simple way and very effective way to sort of start building your programming, but also building your audience, because that's really key. Spark posted some links for arts and music festivals of indigenous, an indigenous-based festival. So definitely check that out on the link. It's Wingamakong Arts and Music. It's on Facebook. Another question, has the partnership impacted what you present or how you present it? I don't think it necessarily impacted what we present, in the sense that we always have a curatorial framework for our programming anyways in a given year. But like I said, if we know that this artist or a program may not be the best fit for our own space, that's where the partnership with Sanderson has really proven to be effective, because their space is so much larger, that it really has allowed that opportunity. But it also, as partners, we can also apply for maybe bigger projects than we normally would have done as a one-off, or on our own. So yeah, it does impact us, but at the same time, I think we both are very aware of our own programming needs and our own curatorial focus, and sort of our own direction that we want to take in the with our performing arts series. But yeah, it's a great question. It does, and you have that sort of, and because you're working in a collaborative way, you have more of that ability to work with one another and go back and forth on some ideas, and provide that sort of that constructive feedback that you kind of need when you are working in a partnership, and really coming up with sort of solutions and how to bridge your audiences, which is really important. I just want to make sure that I've answered all the questions that have come in. And if anyone has any other questions, please feel free to ask. Just another one I wanted to sort of bring up, just as a sort of a talking point, is that I think, I mean, I can't stress this enough, that it, like with anything, with any type of relationship, you really need to take the time, and you really need to be open with one another, and you really need to be able to I think really be honest with with what you want out of the partnership. I think sometimes people go in and sort of go in with their own, um, I don't want to say agenda because that sounds bad, but you kind of go in with your own understanding of what you think the relationship or partnership may be. And I think one of the key things that me and Glenn were able to do was just be honest with one another and be open to hear what each other was trying to say. Um, and I think we were very keen on in knowing that there were some maybe misconceptions or misunderstandings between our communities and our cultures. So I think that that was really really key, was being open. And I would just say, like, it does take time. It requires patience. And like I said, I think the biggest thing for both of us is that we came in with it with a good mind, and we were open, and we just wanted to sort of see where it took us. Um, okay. Um, so a comment came in via email that a member asked me to share. They wanted to say thank you for your presentation. It was great to hear about your story and how your partnership unfolded. It has inspired me to be more open to creating partnerships within my own community. Oh, thank you. I really, I mean, I can't take all the credit for that. Glenn and really, truly is, the other sort of piece of this partnership. I think, you know, I wouldn't have known back then either what, you know, back in 2016 that this would have happened between us, and that we were really, that would have brought together really quite an amazing partnership between our two sites. And I really do encourage you to look in your own community, looking at your own support communities around you. Um, and also, if you do have people you're already working with, and if you are wondering, like, well, how do I make that first step? How do I open that door or have that open conversation? You know, Sometimes it's good to have a connector. And there's people who are really good at this. And like Judy was amazing. Judy Harkle is the one who kind of connected me and Glenn. But there are people, and I like to call them connectors because they're really good at connecting people. And there's usually, you may not think this, but there's always people in your own community who are really good at this. And that sort of, if you are struggling to figure out, well, how do I just start? Like, I don't want to do a cold call, or I don't want to just, you know, put it out there and no one sort of returns the message or will return my question. Try looking for those connectors in your community, um, because really that's what I always try to do myself when, someone may come to Woodland and they have a really great idea, but it just might not fit with what we're looking at for that current programming year, or even like 3 years down the road. I really try to connect them with someone I might know it might be a better fit. And really all it is like I will introduce them over email, or I might call. Um, And when I was, when we were able to gather more, I would say, like, oh, you should come to the show with me and I'll introduce you to so and so, and you guys should talk. And I think something might come from it. That's also really key. And I forgot to mention that because I like to call them connectors. And there's a few people that I work with over the years that are really great at that. And they really can help you sort of bridge that sort of unknown, and make those introductions for you. And that's really really key. And I think that um, it is a good first step if you're a little weary, or if you're not sure, or you don't really necessarily want to do that sort of cold call. um, Try reaching out to one of those connector people because they're really really great. Thank you so much. I don't think I'm receiving any more questions. I just want to thank you all for joining me tonight and for watching my presentation. and to hear my story about sort of creating those partnerships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous organizations. I didn't realize that my story would inspire others, but I just really wanted to say, Nawa, thank you. Um, and I really wanted to say a special shout out to Glenn because I was really worried for him to see this, the video or the presentation, because I hadn't really talked to him about it. And then he found it on YouTube and he shared it with our gathering group that we're all in Curve Lake that like 4 years ago. And he was just like, thank you for sharing our story. And I was just like, oh, it's like, yeah, it's our story. It's not just my story, it's our story. And I'm just so grateful. And I hope that it does inspire some of you to go out there and seek it. And yeah, so thank you again. And if you have any other questions in the future, Spark knows how to get a hold of me. I would be happy to help any way I can as well. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great evening. And in my language, we say ona, and it means see you soon. Ona.